Hello, everybody. Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. Neil, man, good Lord, how are you, man?
I'm doing fine.
Fine. Nicely done. You'll have to see the Facebook Live for that reference. You're supposed to ask me how I'm doing.
How are you doing, Chris?
Now I get to say I'm fine.
Well, I took it from you.
I am better now. I wanted to start the show off this way to kind of explain where we've been. We have been MIA, man. I mean, it has been a weird beginning of 2022. I think the last show you saw on our feeds was, when did it come out? Before New Year's, right?
It was before. I think it might have been either right before Christmas or right after Christmas.
Yeah, it was the holiday show. Now, y'all saw on the Facebook Live, we did do another one that is going to be released to the public on the
Monday.
podcast side of what we do Monday. So yeah, it's just been a time, and I wanted to explain to y'all. We just I think the Omicron thing is like misting from the clouds, and it's just everywhere. I think we were in the States a couple of weeks behind the peaks in Europe. Over there, you guys have kind of led the way with this crazy thing. So I think you were down a little bit. I was down a little bit. We just kind of made some decisions like, look, we're going to get ourselves together, fire it back up when we can get to it. Tonight as we're getting to it. And so we have practiced what I try to preach with taking care of ourselves. So thanks for being patient with us. Kasie, thanks for hanging out and waiting on us, I guess. And Neil, thanks for getting
I held
well.
down the fort here.
You held down the fort well.
I held down the fort.
You absolutely did. I would agree with you, and thank you publicly for that.
Yeah.
Tried to buy you coffee, but nobody would go get coffee today.
Yeah.
That didn't work out. But Neil, I'm glad you're feeling better, buddy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah. So we're back in the saddle. Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, where I like to say you get personal insights from a therapist in your own personal time in your car and at home. See the world through the lens of a therapist. This month we have Kasie, and so you get to see the world through the lens of two therapists. Help us with helping us get the show out to people. 5-star reviews, Apple iTunes. We've got a lot of cool things that we're going to be doing this year. Not ready to announce them, but I'm really excited. It is really a good time to tune into us with the email list to keep track of stuff. We've got some neat things that we're pushing out. We proved last year that we were able to start doing some new things with these cameras, Facebook Lives, and different things. So we are growing, but you guys make that growth work. That really makes a big deal, and we need that. This is the year to really be on point with that. So give us some reviews, follow us on iTunes, Apple, Facebook, respond to the quotes and posts we do. That really makes a big difference. So let's see. This is the human emotional experience, and I really like to say, let's figure this thing out together because we really don't do this alone. I thank you for listening, for tuning in. We've got 180 shows out now here in a minute or so.
Congratulations.
We've been doing it for a minute, and we enjoy doing it. So thanks for journeying along the ride with us. Kasie, let's do a fun fact for you so the audience gets to know you a little bit more. I guess you're talking about this cleaning thing. Should I set you up with that? Like, is this a real thing that you do? Like,
yes.
You do the teeth picking thing?
Yes, I do. So
this is
on Amazon, you can get a lot of different dental tools.
Now, are you talking about the plastic picks that are like floss and pick? My wife loves those.
No. I'm talking about the heavy duty metal.
Wow.
Like it's called a scaler. There's a scaler, and so I do that to prevent plaque in my gums.
Well, you have very nice teeth. I will say that.
Thank you.
That's
my
cool.
parents invested in my mouth when I was younger through the form of braces, retainers. Neil went to high school with me. He can attest to that fact that I had braces for a while. Yeah, it was like a whole like ugly duckling scenario. So
nice.
So now this is what we're left with. So I really am big on dental hygiene.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
fun
good.
fact.
Yeah. My wife was actually I was going to say a dental hygienist for a little while, but that's not right. Been several years, but she was actually a dental assistant.
Yeah, cool.
For a period of time, and then she got back out of the ring with that. But she did that for a little while. She knows all those little tools and instruments, and could probably tell you all the names and everything.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, that is weird. Can I say that?
Sure.
It's cool.
Yeah,
Can
I mean
be
everybody
cool
has
and
their
weird
thing,
at the same time.
You know? So, yeah, I think two things can happen at the same time. You can be cool and weird, and I feel like normal is a setting on a dryer. So, this is
awesome.
Me. What you
All
see is
right.
what you get, dude. Like, that's just who I am.
So we have an interesting sort of, we didn't plan it this way, but when you look at the New Year's kind of topics, which I looked at that playback, I was proud of myself for that, man. I nailed them.
Yes,
nailed
you
them.
did.
The top 5, I got 4 for 4 on things that people look at as far as New Year's resolutions and things that we talked about last show. I'm going to have to get used to being ahead now. That'll come out Monday.
Yeah.
We covered the topic of money a few weeks ago, actually. And it's funny because Kasie came to me. She's like, Chris, you just did this topic. What are we doing? I'm like, I don't know. They all blend together now for me. But we're going to do a different thing, I think, as we go through this. And so why don't you go ahead and set up the flavor of how we're going to deal with, what did we call this? Money makes things better.
More money, more problems.
Yeah, it is not better.
Be aware of how to meet your financial goals in the new year. So kind of banking on what we talked about the last show that we did 2 weeks ago, I took one of the top five New Year's resolutions and I did a deep dive into it. In fact, Chris even made some comments about the commentary that we print out. It's like, it's a dissertation.
You want show notes, man. We got show notes today,
so the
man.
first thing Chris asks me is, how are you going to keep track of time? I'm like, oh yeah, on my phone. But I promise that I'm not going to like preach a whole sermon here. And this is not going to be about, like how to make money, keep money, things like that. It's really going to be about a couple of interests that I have. First of all, the concept of wealth, and we'll kind of get into an emotional side of what is wealth. And then also, this was kind of born out of a story that I followed on Netflix and actually traced back one of the houses of one of the participants of the story to Belmont.
Really?
Yeah.
Our little old town of Belmont, North Carolina.
So I do want to shout out one person who's my mentor, Chris, Steve, because he alerted me to the fact that person's actually was a local resident at one point.
Why do we not have a guest?
Well,
we haven't had a lot of guests lately.
Okay, I'll tell you why.
All right.
Because this person is deceased.
Oh, well, that would be tough.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that whole situation and how sometimes more money leads to more problems. So,
that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and so I am a true crime junkie. So part of this was born out of that. And because I didn't want to take the podcast freedom to make this a true crime episode.
Yeah, we can't do like TLC or the NBC show that they do all those crime shows on the
Dateline.
Oh God, the Dateline thing. Yes, I can't allow that. That would drive me nuts.
Okay, that's fine. But I modified it and changed it a little bit so we could incorporate some of those elements. Ooh.
Although that guy totally has the awesomest sleeping voice ever.
Yeah, I listened to his podcast on the way in here, and if you check us out. Dateline is a cool podcast.
Yeah, really. I bet it is. I bet it is. That whole show is set up nicely for.
I will never leave Metro Atlanta Psychotherapy and Associates, but if I ever did, it would be to run that podcast with
awesome.
Les Miles or whoever is going to be on there. Yeah.
I can believe that
for sure. So
more money, more problems.
Right. So first of all, I want to point out that I'm an '80s baby that listened to a lot of music in the '90s, and Mace was a rap artist in the '90s, and he had a song with P. Diddy and Big Papa, who's my favorite rappers, and the Notorious B.I.G. So if there's any Biggie fans out there, this was a song title that they had. The more money that comes to us, the more problems we see was one of the lines. So
I remember that song. Yeah, I know where you're at with that now. Okay.
Yeah. So Chris, I kind of want to start out this with a question to you. Like, what does the word wealthy mean to you?
Well, it's a good question, and actually, as you were kind of laying out what we're going to be into tonight, I think that the show a few weeks ago that Adam and I did was really talking a lot about that. So I think that we can short circuit through that a little bit because we really did talk a lot about the take that I took on money was really a lot of the emotional things. So that's still a little fresh on my brain. So I'm not really going to give you as good of a fresh, clear answer because it it goes a lot to, I think, a lot of what we talked about with shame-based feelings and, insecurities that get created and keeping up with the Joneses and a lot of those types of really pressured emotions that people very much feel about finances. It just really, to me, when you think about the emotional aspects of it, which is where my slant is, people get tore up by this. Like, I feel like it's one of the big stressors that people really get angst about, lose sleep about, worry about, try to, get into fears about. So that's, I know that all sounds really pretty negative, but it can get that way, I think, with people.
Yeah, it definitely can. And so, me, in true Kasie fashion, I put some definitions
We
on
always
here.
do.
That's right.
That's because you fit into our show perfectly. We always
this
do
is what I love.
definitions.
So what Webster's would say is that wealth is defined as the abundance of valuable possessions or money. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. It also defined it as material prosperity or having an abundance of a particular resource, such as oil, food, things like that. So oil wealth, food wealth. So in different
Little
parts
side note, in Armageddon times when we get there, who knows, with Omicron and the snow we have coming again this weekend, salt makes you wealthy in Armageddon times. Did you know that?
No.
It is like a precious resource that we don't even think about nowadays, and shows will tell you about that because you can't function in a society without salt.
Yeah, I'm
Salting
pretty
your
sure
meat
at this point, if there's an actual apocalypse, I'm just going to be like, whatever.
Yeah,
You know what I
I'm
mean?
with
Like,
you.
bring it. It's fine.
Yeah.
This is fine.
We'll be together in a tree somewhere.
Exactly. Or in this office, just unknowingly. Like, that's when we walk in and we have 8 appointments. We walk in at a time and then we
What?
just walk
Nobody's
out.
coming?
We're like, oh, where did we go?
therapy.
It's like The Walking Dead now
That's
out there.
awesome.
So, yeah. So, what I think is cool about this definition, that particularly the first one, is that it includes the word or. So it said valuable possessions or money.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah.
I like that part of the definition, because I think when we think about what is wealth,
Right.
we think about
Money.
the accumulation of money and assets,
Yeah.
right? But there are a lot of valuable possessions, and I'm sure that Webster was not intending to go this
Right.
deep. But there are a lot of valuable possessions about our lives that we don't always consider when we look at the accumulation of wealth. So that's something that we're going to cover today.
Okay.
And how it's not just money based.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you saying?
there's. I'm just following with you on that thought, and to me, yeah, there's a lot of things that can we say emotionally healthy people follow wealth not through money. I don't think that's too bad a statement.
I love that. Can you say it again?
Emotionally healthy people follow wealth not through money. Mm-hmm. I think that's an awesome quote. Neil, you got quotes, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you better pin that down and make it a meme.
Right? Like, that is a good
Put
meme.
your face on it. Yeah.
Right? Because,
Take a still frame.
but if you
Yeah.
think about the depths of that says a lot.
It really does. And that's exactly kind of where we're going to hope to arrive by the end of this conversation.
Okay, mic drop. Boom.
Yeah. Like, okay, we're done. Bye, everybody. It's been nice. It's been a
nailed
great show.
Yeah.
Oh, we're all tired. No. But so I've worked a lot of jobs, up until this point. My resume is kind of like ping ponged a little bit. And so I'm in true millennial fashion, right? So
Yes.
throwback to the generations discussion. But in one of my favorite times was when I was working inpatient mental health at a local hospital in the Statesville region, right? So when I was working inpatient mental health there, I worked for this doctor. He was amazing. His name is Dr. Basnett. If you're listening, what up? He is fantastic. He's one of the best psychiatrists I've ever worked with in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
Would
Okay.
trust him with my life. And I asked him one time about like his just like things in personal life. We were just chit chatting one day, and I'm like, "Oh wow, like you're a psychiatrist."
Wait a minute. Hold the phone. You were chit chatting.
Of course, I'm an
Okay.
expressive. That's my love language. Is chit chatting.
Love it.
Yeah. So I asked him one day. I was like, like wow, like you're a psychiatrist. Your wife's a pediatrician. Like way to be balling, like way to
right.
do life, right?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said the most simplistic statement, and I thought it was very profound. He said, honestly, you just spend the money that you have.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, That is so true, right? Like, and you can live within your means and things like that. And so today I'm not really talking about like what is living within your means and Dave Ramsey and all of that stuff. But I thought that simple statement was so profound that, no matter the accumulation of money that you have, we typically, as a society, spend the money that we have. And so if you accumulate a huge salary, we usually look at, buying a large home or having a nice car.
I can tell you behind the scenes
go ahead.
in the therapy realm, oftentimes when I'm working with people that are wealthy, they are struggling financially.
Sure.
They really are. I mean, we pine after that, and we try to keep up with that, and we kind of glorify people that have, high incomes and stuff. I'm telling you, a lot of times that is the source of their stress. Mm-hmm. They're really struggling to organize the structure of their life as it relates to money, and we see that in fame all the time. On Entertainment Tonight and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
People fall.
Right. And who you befriend, who you trust with your money, things like that, it becomes a pressure cooker of a situation. Because if it falls to the wrong people in the wrong hands, in the wrong situation, in the wrong investment, you're looking at going from literally riches to rags, which is opposite of
that happens.
What that dream is, right? So, but after all, though, the first concept here is it takes money to live. So I don't want to be in denial of that concept. So I don't want to have it be like this whole thing where I'm like, all you got to do is live on love, because that is like, that's a farce,
wow,
right?
You did that
like
well. You did it almost too well.
Yeah. I even did like the peace sign for those who are just listening, And so I do have some hippie vibes. Like I'm very boho.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, I have on like a vest today that I'm pretty sure is vintage, but whatever.
Is what?
Vintage.
Vintage?
Vintage consignment.
Vintage.
Yeah.
Oh, vintage consignment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pre-owned.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, it kind of smells like mothballs.
I think I just showed my ignorance with the
It's
the
okay.
whole
Millennials.
attire wars.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. So it takes money to live, whether it's from your job, from assistance, whatever the case may be. You have to sustain life, and so there are lots of arguments about what that looks like all across the world, in our region, in our town, in our communities, or even in our homes, and what is the difference between what you have to live and what you want, right? So there's that whole thing, right?
And just to highlight that,
go ahead.
we even have that in a psychological sense when you look at something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Right.
That's a theoretical perspective almost, where this guy Maslow years ago, early on in our field, kind of looked at like the basic needs of a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is being self-actualized, and then different layers in the middle are where we deal with mental health and kind of getting our life together. But the basic foundational level is absolutely real. If you do not have foundational components, housing, heat, food,
shelter,
you cannot function. It's
safety.
the foundation.
Yeah.
So that safety level of functioning with Maslow's is what we're validating now.
Right,
It's
exactly.
It's an essential.
Exactly. But what that forces us into is that anything above that basic level of safety or security or scarcity becomes a vision of success, right? So we start to look at people that are kind of higher up on that ladder, and it's very natural to kind of want what they have, right? To look at that and say, wow, if I only had more money, or they're wealthy, right? Like they are very prosperous in their life. And so that drive and determination starts for some people a motivation to do more, or it can actually drive down the mood and lessen motivation because you're so upset about your current station in life. Would you say that that's kind of the truth as well?
That's a good point. Absolutely. I think people get very depressed about not having wealth and getting stuck in their own mindset that is a mentality of failure in oneself based on money, which sounds silly to say.
Right.
If you really get down to saying that, people would probably be like, oh, yeah, no, I don't do that. That's not. But I think we do.
Right. And I think what really infiltrates that and really perpetuates that mindset is a lot of times social media and what we're force-fed through magazines and other forms of media as well, which is to be successful, this is what this looks like. This is
You know what's interesting? I don't want to
icons.
blame social media
Okay.
in that regard. I think that goes further beyond that. I have like 2 cows. That's all I have. I have enough for milk, and I don't have anything else. Look at John down the street. He's got chickens, cows. He's got camels and everything else for transportation, and I'm sitting here with 2 goats. I think it goes really a lot further back when
Sure.
we're looking at how human beings interact and compare ourselves with that.
right.
Is that
Yeah,
does that
I
sound
mean,
fair?
Yeah, I think there are lots of origins of it for
Yeah.
sure. I think that for most of the people that I talk about, when we talk about comparison being kind of the death of real joy, right?
Well, there's a phrase.
Yeah, comparison is the death of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when comparison is really the death of real joy, what they talk to me about particularly, and I am talking more about my office, is what they see their friends doing, what gets posted.
Yeah.
And
It's probably accentuated for sure with social media. I
Right.
will say that too. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and I even have somewhat of a personal story. My son came home and said, "Mom, why'd you send me to school in fake Nikes?" And I was like, first of all,
Ouch.
why?
He's not even in middle school
Right,
yet. What
and
the
I'm like
heck?
checking myself because I'm like, did I really buy him fake Nikes? Because I don't know.
I suck.
Like I literally ordered your shoes online because your foot grows every other week. Like I can't
Right.
keep shoes on your feet.
Right.
And so the answer is no, I didn't. But at the same time, like, why do I care if some other 5th grader thinks that I bought you fake Nikes? But then I realized it's a big deal to him because he goes to a school where they wear uniforms and they can't have logos. So the only logos that are present are literally the logos on their shoes. And here we are in a society where kids are looking at other people's shoes to determine whether or not that's an authentic Nike check or a fake Nike check.
I remember lots of moments of sadness as a child because we didn't have a lot of those nice things and whatnot, really,
Oh, yeah.
frankly. And then that was a source of shame, is another word.
Exactly. And I remember very distinctly when I realized myself that perhaps, I wasn't in the best financial situation when I was a child was because one time I wore these shoes that I loved because I'm a huge Tar Heels fan, which we talked about last show, right? Like I'm a huge Carolina Tar Heel fan. I love college basketball. I bleed it. And Kmart had these shoes that were like Tar Heel shoes. And it was like UNC on the side. And on the tongue of the tennis shoe was the Ram's head, like Ramsey's head. I thought they were the coolest shoes I've ever seen in my life because it's like my team and whatever. So I wear those to school and several people made fun of them.
Oh, no.
Because they were not a brand of shoe. They were like Kmart branded shoes, I guess. And I was like, why does it matter? And that's when people started telling me about it. So I think I was in like 5th or 6th grade, the first time I ever realized that brands were like a thing. And so, so we see that and it starts to create problems for people, right? And that is where we get introduced to it. So it isn't even in our adult life, right? Like we're talking about
this is, kid
like
stuff.
kids as young as like 5 that I know of. That's my frame of reference.
There's
is
probably
around
worse
my
when you're kids, really.
Yeah. And like, do you have a phone? Do you not have a phone? Okay, well, is your phone an iPhone or is it not an iPhone? Like, it's like it's on and on and on.
I heard for years and years being a parent, Dad, I have an iPhone 2. I don't know, like 7 was out or something.
Yeah, you better be glad you have a phone, period.
Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
listen, my mom had to call me on the Uniden mobile, like a handheld phone, and I was one of the only people that didn't have a phone plugged into the wall in college. Like I actually had a portable phone. I was like, look at this. It was $10 at Walmart. But anyway, so we would like to think of this concept that having an abundance of money would ultimately affect our happiness in a positive direction. But the truth is that sometimes more money really creates more problems. And so the first thing I want to focus on is that unless you are independently wealthy because of a trust or like generational wealth, you typically, and please argue if you think anything differently than this, but you typically are having to spend a lot more time away from your family to accumulate that personal wealth.
Sure.
Okay. So you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
You also have to spend a lot more time less focused on yourself and more focused on the work that you're doing to accumulate
definitely.
wealth.
And personally guilty as charged.
Oh, You want to tell us a little bit about
years
that?
ago. That was still probably a part of me. Yeah, that's part of why I'm probably as hard of a worker as I am.
Yeah. And so I think that that's true whether a person's married, single, divorced, so on and so forth. The amount of time it takes to accumulate what we believe to be a certain amount of wealth takes a significant portion of time.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at wealth as like a spectrum, right? Yes, someone may accumulate more things, but is it more valuable or more wealthy to have more things or to have more qualitative memories with your family?
Well, yeah, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on this,
okay.
but moving us ahead a little bit to what is enough. You know, earlier on in my life, I was kind of trying to rid myself of some of this stuff emotionally, honestly.
Okay.
And so I would actually take like $100 and just blow it, force myself just to blow it because, I needed to be able to do that. And I didn't allow myself to do that. And so one of the things along those lines that really kind of helped as well is to realize, look, first world problems, we all make jokes like, oh, yeah, that's really a first world problem right there, Well, I heard this one day, and I'll insert it here because I think it was helpful to me and hopefully some others. When you have, and I'm not speaking specifics, I think I'm close to the concept here, though, but, we have downloads all around the world in Africa and Zimbabwe and various places. If you have something like a bathroom in your home, like with running water, or a car that actually works, or like...
Gosh, more than one car.
Yeah. No, if you have like 2 cars in your family, these basic things that we all, I think, take for granted, you're something like in the world's top 4% of wealth, like right there in and of itself. That to me just blew me away.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see myself as that way. But when I kind of came to that reality, it's kind of like, yeah, I think I'm doing pretty well. Like I have enough.
Yeah.
But people that really have a lot of resources, and wealthy people will talk about this, it's more and more and more and more. They're always like, do not land on I do have enough. That is a mystery concept.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
One of my kids' favorite movies is The Lorax. He Speaks for the Trees. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Your kids are probably too old.
Yeah.
Neil, have you seen The Lorax? Yeah. So in The Lorax, there is this man, the Onceler, and the Onceler wants to bigger everything and better everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he makes this thing called a thneed, and he mass produces it. But pretty soon he cuts down all the trees, and he no longer has the main resource to make this thing, and he loses everything.
Interesting.
And so there's a whole story behind that. But that's what I think of. It's just like when we get a little taste of it, we want to bigger it, we want to better it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we continue to try to contribute to it when we're really not focused on what is actually contributing to our happiness and the abundance of wealth within our lives.
Well, I'm not a cultural expert, but I think that afflicts us pretty strongly here in the States.
It does.
I mean, in the States, I would present that as a problem to a certain extent.
Because
we have that
arguably,
problem.
if you're not waiting for the weekly delivery of water because you can't have a well, or you can't do basic things like brush your teeth, and like going back to my whole teeth obsession, then, part of this, and this is not supposed to be a shameful thing, but, check your privilege a little bit, like there's some wealth in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
But also, I think there is a concept that I really do want to focus on, which is you cannot buy time.
Yeah.
You can buy a lot of things, and you can buy vacations to spend time with your family. But think about the number of people that you have seen either in a restaurant, on vacation, or whatever, tied to their cellular device, tied to a laptop, tied to something that ties them to work.
Well, I can highlight that, I think, honestly, Kasie, to help you out to exemplify that.
Sure.
I'm getting a little older now, and I can look back on life and the times. And this is a common experience that I think people have. When you look back, let's just say your marriage, and you begin to evaluate the life that you've had together. I remember Dominican Republic when we went there.
Yeah.
I remember St. Martin. I remember the trips to Florida to see the in-laws. Those times that you shared, those times that you invested in each other, that's what you pine for. So, I mean, of course, yeah, like time is something interesting that you spend so much time getting wealth for.
Yeah.
But the time that you share and the moments that are there with my kids, there are moments I will never forget, with them. It's that time. Yeah, so it's an incredibly wealthy commodity.
Yeah, it is. And so I think that that's one thing that we often take for granted is that time factor.
Yeah.
Because what is the saying? The days are long, but the years are short.
That is a thing.
When I looked at something the other day on the internet, I saw something as I'm hustling and bustling kids around. In fact, we started a little early today because my son has a basketball game, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like going to hustle from here to get to the ball game. And I read something the other day on the internet that said, one day you'll wake up and there will be nobody left to take to practice.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about a gutting feeling?
Ooh,
I was like,
did you?
all the mom feels came to me in that exact moment because it's true. Like one day there won't be anybody to take to practice. Yeah.
We're past it.
Yeah, you're the living example. And you're about 10 years ahead of me in age,
Yep.
no offense. And so it's graceful aging, if that helps.
Yeah, it's good.
I actually have more gray hairs on my head than you have in your beard, but I color my hair. So that's
I have a beard, y'all. It's like we'll see how long we keep
it's getting a little unruly, by the way.
Is it really?
You might
I'm
need
not sure what to
groom
do
a
with it.
little.
We'll see.
Yeah. But you're right. And so I think kind of in that next segment that
You
we're
didn't
talking
say
about.
bless your heart. It's getting a little ruly.
Bless your heart.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah. So then what happens is exactly what you're talking about, right? Like the kids are gone and you've survived together, right? In a relationship. Let's say like you're married or something. You've survived this time together of raising these kids. I'm even thinking back to the Lost Decade episode that
Absolutely.
you did and how that worked. And so then it's like the focal point becomes that next phase of life, which is like retirement. And so then you have that stressor of, did I do enough? Am I going to live long enough? Did I accumulate enough? And are you? Like, I'm like preaching right now. Yeah. And now that this wealth has been generated, it kind of becomes that focal point of how do I protect this so that if social programs don't work out, I'm able to live and survive, and my spouse can survive, or whoever I need dependents that I have that I need to take care of. Like, how do they survive? And so, yes, you might be able to do things together, but that worry and stress is a problem.
And I think I want to make just a quick point about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. A lot of people from Psych 101 have probably heard that. But we can get on that foundational level really easily. And I don't think people realize that when we're talking about mental health, your emotions, and money, you did. I'm kind of wondering about retirement and that type of thing.
Sure.
Myself right now at this midlife stage of life. And hadn't entered in too much right now yet, but it's getting there. And that's Maslow's safety, bottom level, foundational concern, right?
Right.
We can get there, whether it's legit or not. I mean, we can have perceptions and fears, but my point is, like, we can struggle on that foundational level.
Yeah.
And almost create it psychologically.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's a little
agreed.
tangent there, but
and one thing that I want to wrap back around is, yes, like in our country, in the United States, we are probably seen as one of the wealthiest nations from a monetary valuables perspective. But the truth is that going back to that concept of time, the investment we make in our careers to accumulate this wealth does not increase the time we invest in developing really our culture and developing our families. If you think about other countries who may have less material wealth, they generally don't have established or cultivated retirement systems because what they do culturally is they take care of one another.
Absolutely.
The parent moves into the home, so they're not worried about retirement and stuff. They move in with a child. The child takes care of them. There is a cultivated presence of acceptance, responsibility, and just this interweaving of a family dynamic that we don't see in our country.
First world problems.
Right. It's a first world problem on a different level. And so I do want to take the time tonight and kind of flip that perspective and say, you're spending a lot of time attempting to chase the American dream and accumulate wealth, but are you investing time in what really matters when it comes down to the end of your life.
It's a really good teaching moment. You know,
Thanks.
it really it's a good reflection point to really get your brains to be thinking out there about what is the priority streams for
Right.
you. Yeah.
And how a lot of those concepts can infiltrate your life and really become your motivation. And to me, what I see, particularly in my office, is it becomes a misalignment of that value system. And we touched on that the last show about aligning with your values and how that should become kind of what you resolute to do. But the truth is that when we're chasing the accumulation of wealth, a lot of times we misalign ourselves with our values. Just like my value right now is to try to be the best mom that I can be, right? We talked about that as my resolution because my little tiny humans, they love me already.
Yeah.
But in order for me to do that, I have to invest time. They may come to me and ask me if they have fake Nikes, but if I'm not going to their ball games and I'm not at home and I'm not participating in snow days and I'm not participating in their lives, they could give a junk bit less about what I buy them
Yeah.
or what trips we take. Because if I'm not fully present, then it doesn't matter what their presents are.
Ooh, there's another good quote.
Thank you.
It's another good quote.
Yeah.
And it really is so true. Look, the human connection is the human emotional experience, what we talk about on this show.
Right.
And you're laying into a really valuable human emotional experience between something as a caregiver can be for a child. It's really wealthy.
Yeah, and I think the same is true for our significant others and spouses. Is that
Oh, yeah.
that when we talk about that, and as we continue our discussion, finances are a really big issue and a really big a part of the demise of a lot of marriages. How the money is spent, how the money is accumulated, what is done with it, decisions about money, things like that can really drive couples apart. And what I see the most of in that discussion, from my perspective, and I'll be glad to hear your perspective, is I see a lot of one person that's usually a saver and one person that's usually what I would term a thoughtful spender, where they feel like they need to spend money on their children, they need to spend money on the house to keep it up, they need to spend money on their parents, like whatever the case may be. And the other one is like save, 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 save.
Well, yeah, no, my perspective, and this is a good place to put into Dave Ramsey's Financial
Sure.
Peace University, which I always like to mention as one of the trifecta.
Been through it twice.
Yeah, awesome. Craig, my buddy Craig, and one of the co-hosts teaches the class. It goes directly in line with the abandonment and engulfment
Absolutely.
characteristics
100%.
with emotion-focused therapy. They work together like a glove. And the reality of it is there are two different perspectives. One is, the nerd, Dave calls him, and that's the saver, the defensive person with debt. And the other is the free spirit, the one that's spending. And how did you put it? The thoughtful spender.
Thoughtful spender, yeah.
Sure. But it's like let's use the resources for those needs that we have. And that grind is something that it does lead to incredible marital distress.
Yeah.
It is one of the big marital killers, people would say, that talk about it in that way, finances.
Right. And if you couple that, I would venture to say, if you couple that with kind of a lack of communication because one person is spending a significant amount of time trying to accumulate that wealth and the quality time has gone out the window, then you are left with a pretty dire situation where if all we're talking about is how we disagree about finances because we haven't talked through how we look at this, what do we do together, what's our budget, things like that, then that multi-layered issue can really lead to a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah.
And so
We see that in our office from time to time.
probably every day.
Yeah,
Like
often.
every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I think it does lead to, and this is where the true crime part comes into
Okay.
play.
Are we getting to the story? Because I think that's going to be cool.
Yes.
Okay.
We are.
The
Okay.
story part. I love
Yes.
story time.
Yes. So one thing I think it does lead to, and this is not a knock on any multi-level marketing kinds of things, okay? So I just want to make that qualifying statement.
Okay.
is that
Well, what's multi-level marketing?
okay,
This
so
is
yeah,
the-
so
the
multi-level marketing
sales
would be
stuff
like
and the
where you enter
Mary
in
Kay
as like
and-
a consultant, right? And then if you get people under you,
Right.
then you start making commissions off of their sales, and you build up these teams, and so it becomes a pyramid. So it used to be called pyramid schemes, but I think now they call it multi-level marketing because you do kind of own your own inventory and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you're not downing those.
I'm not trying to down those, but I think what happens is when we get into situations where it feels like this accumulation of wealth is something that could be within our reach, and people start dangling out a carrot. Like, if you do this, if you get to this level, you can drive a Lexus for the next, like, how many ever years, as long as you stay at that level, right? Or if you do this, like, then you qualify for a cruise. And so your vacation's paid for. All you have to do is get on a website and sell some stuff.
It's attractive.
Right. It's very attractive, especially if you are not the breadwinner of the family and you want to have some extra income. And they're like, yeah, we pay you out weekly, or we give you a debit card and do whatever.
That is such a different perspective.
What were you going to say?
No, I think you tuned me into a different perspective on that, being the the guy. I don't know that I haven't. That's interesting.
Yeah. And in fact, like, you can't really get on your individual social media. Well, I can't get on my social media without having a request for some kind of party or something like that.
Really?
And please hear me. I love to support my friends. I buy a lot of this stuff. A lot of my clothes comes from things like that. The nail colors that I often wear come from things like that. So I have no problem with the product.
Kitchen stuff's pretty awesome.
Yeah, like the Pampered Chef stuff.
Yes.
Like I'm like in it to win it when it comes like that. I don't sell it, but like I'm in it to win it. But I think that what happens sometimes, it's that attractiveness of what could be, right? It becomes that, like, what could be. But then what we find is a lot of people in that accumulation, that drive towards that wealth, accumulate massive amounts of debt, because in order to maintain your level, you have to keep up with
inventory
and keep up with a certain quota. So this is how that leads into my story about our friend from Belmont.
All right.
So does the name Shannon what's her last name? I put it on my sheet. Where's it at? Oh, Shannon Watts. Does the name Shannon Watts ring a bell to you?
No, not even a little bit.
So Shannon Watts used to have a home here in Belmont. Okay.
And this is a public story, so
this is a public story.
So
there's a Netflix documentary
Gotcha.
about it. Okay. And the Netflix documentary, I think, is called American Family Next Door or something like that. The Family Next Door. American Murder.
American Murder, Family Next Door.
The Family Next Door. So Shannon was living in Belmont, had her own home, and was working near here. And then she was dating a guy from Mooresville, North Carolina, named Chris.
This is
Watts.
local.
Yeah. So she was, just a beautiful person. Everybody that knew her loved her. Same thing with him. He was a very dynamic personality, all of this stuff. And so they get married. And I believe the story goes that his job takes them out to Colorado. Okay. He's in the oil business. And so he's going out there. He's going out on these big jobs and things like that. So Shannon's got her own thing going on. She has 2 little girls. They are having a life together out there. Her family's still here in North Carolina. She's traveling back and forth. And she really is not doing a lot for herself. So she decides that she wants to start earning for herself. And so she gets involved with a multi-level marketing company. And to protect the name of that company, I'm not going to say it live on the podcast. But she gets involved with it, right? They get in so much debt. And I'm not saying that this led to the demise of their family, but she had thousands upon thousands of dollars of inventory that she just continually started racking up on credit cards and putting in their basement to stay at a certain level. She was driving a Lexus, like all of this stuff, right? They were living in this huge home out there. Like it was a thing. Okay. So obviously this created a lot of situations for their family. They filed bankruptcy multiple times.
Oh, wow.
But continued to try.
That was a nice Lexus.
Right. But continued to try to live at this level. Okay.
Jeez.
And so a lot of pressure was added to the situation. So when that pressure started mounting, the mental health of the husband really started to decline because he's overworking. He's doing a lot of other things. There might be some personality things there. I'm not his therapist. I'm not going to make a judgment on that.
Gotcha.
But he is in these big oil jobs, and he starts trying to relieve or eradicate that stress by working out. Okay. He cuts his body fat percentage. He's looking really good. He meets somebody at the gym, and long story short, pretty soon there's a relationship that blooms, right? So things continue. Well, Shannon back at home finds out that she's pregnant again with Chris's baby, okay? Her husband's child. So he, is seen on video. He pulls into the driveway around 5:30 in the morning. Something comes out back into his truck. He pulls out of the driveway, and that's it, okay? Pretty soon, no one hears from Shannon or hears anything from the girls. So her best friend goes over there. So on this Netflix documentary, I kid you not, he is wearing the multi-level marketing product like on his arm, like in this Netflix documentary, okay? Like to tie that into what we're talking about. But ends up, he actually murdered her and her 2 girls and put their bodies in oil tanks. So there's that. But what I'm saying is that money issue, that pressure cooker of a situation that led to the demise of kind of the mental health structures and all of
sort
those
of
things.
Subterfuge process.
What was going on. Yeah. And so I think that not that that's going to happen to you in your life, right? Like I don't want to make that stretch. But I think it's important to say that having more money a lot of times creates a vast array of problems.
Well, and I think that we're moving towards debt, as well to discuss that whole dynamic because debt isn't money. That's the opposite of money. But boy, people fall into major aspects of debt. So you could look at that as a financial outcropping, if you will, of what people are trying to pursue. Yeah.
And as like a struggling college student and then a teacher after college, I can tell you, like I've had my fair share of run-ins with running up against like a debt or two, right?
Yeah.
So if you understand that level of anxiousness that comes with, can I feed myself, and or do I keep my lights on, then you are butting up against exactly what you've talked about, which is Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Like, do I keep my lights on or do I feed myself?
There's a reason why in the Great Depression people were jumping out of freaking skyscrapers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they were really doubtful and fearful, keyword, about how they were going to function.
Right. And I think it's also true that when we talk about like medications and things like that, and I don't want to get into a whole debate or discussion about pharmaceuticals, but a lot of people in this country have to think about making a payment or buying their meds. And that is just a reality that we deal with, right? And so it is a hard discussion to have. But the truth of the matter is that the wealthiest people, no matter what their job is or what their bank account says, the wealthiest people operate with the most minimal amount of debt. And to me, when you talk about overwhelming wealth, I believe it has to be an acute balance between what you need to live and what you want to live. What do you think about
what
that?
you need to live and what you want to live?
Yeah.
I think it has to do with being grounded with, with that differential. I think, needs and wants. We talk about that with our kids. Well, do you need those Nike shoes to go to school?
Yeah.
Or do you want those things? And we are operating a lot of times out of wants.
Yeah,
if we're being honest.
We want more, we want bigger, we want better, just like the Onceler from the Lorax.
Yeah.
But I think money can perpetuate problems that we don't need. And the reason why I think that is exactly what that doctor told me, is that we try to spend the money we have.
So let me ask you this. Let's think about this from an emotional perspective. What do you think really grabs people into that perspective on an emotional level? I guess that's why I did the show on money before and took the emotional angle. What really grabs people in? I mean...
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's a status, right? Like
status, ego?
Yeah, status and ego.
Vanity?
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, like I think it's a level of comfortability and responsibility too. So I don't want to diminish the fact that there are people that are like, I feel responsible for my family. I want to work hard to make sure my family has a comfortable life. But I think there's a difference between comfortable and conceited, right? So there's a vast difference between that, right?
I'm just going to propose and wonder out loud. I think that's why the Maslow's thing hit me. Is it possible that fundamental aspects of fear for your survival? Now, I know that sounds crazy when people are wealthy and whatever. Mr. and Mrs. Wallace or whatever their name was, couldn't have been fearful.
Yeah.
Watts couldn't have been fearful about their ability to survive, but were they? Because the debt kind of goes through your system, and I wonder if you get fearful about your physical ability to survive given the debt threshold and the anxiety that creates. Is fear one of the major emotional forces there?
I think fear is a force there, and I think it's a fear of survival, and then I think it's a fear of social exclusion. Like, I really believe that. I think that
FOMO strikes again.
Yeah, FOMO. But I really do believe that we want to create a life where we have this community, right? And the community we want to be in is the community that, has the parties and has the social aptitudes and has all the best things because it looks attractive. We used to say the phrase sex sells, right? Like sex sells, and in the news, like gore sells, sex sells, things like that. I think the allure of money or the love of money sells. People want other people to think that they have it together, that their life is a grand life. Like, this is my house. This is my vehicle. You might be in debt up to your eyeballs, but this status symbol makes you tick. And I think that is very much emotional and personality driven.
Vanity. I left my thoughts in way of fear with survival. However, I think I just got it back. It's fleeting in my brain, though. I think I almost lost it again, right? Like, vanity. So when I ask you what emotion might be driving some of this, I think I switched gears and landed on fear for survival. And what I was originally thinking is, are we struggling with an emotional starting spot or position with not feeling valuable or good enough as a person, as a man or as a woman? Like, as I am, back to your point, I think a show or two ago about being enough, like how powerful that really is. Is it so that we might have such strong personal, internal, never let anybody know feelings that I suck, poor insecurity, poor self-view? I wonder how much that drives what appears as a search for vanity.
Yeah.
But starts from a space of bad self-perspective.
Yeah, which I think can also be born out of a lot of different things. Trauma being one of them.
Trauma, absolutely.
Yeah. Or
people told me I suck. That's why I feel like I suck.
Or a scarcity mentality. Like, I've never really had anything, and so now that I have something, I want to do it now, right? Like, because I might not have it a year from now because I've lived in situations where it's fluctuated between
those are powerful
haves
emotions
and have-nots, right? And so
it creates vanity.
It does. It creates vanity in a way, but I think the origins of vanity really come from that deeper emotional experience in the relationship you have with money. And I think that is something you have to explore if you want to be a wealthy person. What is your relationship with money?
And if you're listening to this show, we're not going to have enough time to go into that depthy-wise.
Right.
Go back a couple shows because we hit that.
Exactly.
We hit that strongly.
Exactly. So,
Adam and I did, yeah.
So here are a couple of takeaways. So if this is something that speaks to you and you're like, wow, like I've really been thinking about wealth in a different direction, then here are some things that I think where you can kind of start with to be able to kind of prepare yourself to be a wealthy individual. One is to communicate. Like, if you're married or in a relationship, you need to be communicating about your finances. You guys talked about that a couple of shows ago. I heard it on there. But communication is key. Like, what are your goals? And I would envision starting with the end in mind. Where do you want to be?
Yeah.
and how do you get there?
And that's all a bunch of Dave Ramsey
it
stuff.
is. Like I said,
That right there is Dave
twice
Ramsey
through Financial
enables.
Peace University.
He enables that communication and discussion to happen when I find nothing else really had allowed couples to do that.
Oh, yeah,
it's a powerful thing.
Because that whole discussion between abandonment and engulfment individuals are like, oh, you're not naming the envelopes. I'm naming the envelopes. You know, like the little pots of money. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Right.
So we're enabling that communication piece. Set your goals and then revisit your goals. So I think that's another big component of this. If you have a goal in mind about your personal wealth, and I would hope that after this discussion, it's about quality time and things like that make you a wealthy individual. If you set a goal around that, revisit that goal. Don't just set it and let it go. So I think thinking through it and revisiting it is good. Are you spending time with significant people in your life? And if you're not, what plans are you making to do so? So again, you can't buy time. The days are long, the years are short. Refocus that goal. And then what habits are you teaching the people that are watching you, whether it's your children, your friends, your family? What witnesses are seeing your ideals around wealth? Because I can tell you right now that my kids will recreate statements about what is going on. My mom's favorite story about me as a child, this is going to be really quick because I know we need to kind of wrap things up. But so my mom was a single mom for a while, and she used to do that self-talk thing in the car, right? Like where like you're like getting ready to go in somewhere and she's like self-talking to herself in the driver's seat, right? So she was like looking at the register on her checkbook and like bouncing her checkbook, and she's like, oh God, I hope this check doesn't clear before my check goes into the bank account, right? And all this stuff. So she's self-talking herself. Well, I'm hearing this. I'm 8 years old, okay? Like just a spry 8-year-old. So I'm hearing this. I'm probably too smart for my own good, as I've been told a few times, right? I'm a know-it-all. So we go in the grocery store. We do all the grocery shopping. We have a cart full of groceries. And so they give us the total, and my mom goes to write a check. And I tug on my mom and I say, Mom, you said in the car that check's going to bounce. You shouldn't write a check right now.
In the store.
Yeah. So how you communicate about that is being radiated to everybody that bears
Well, it's a
witness to your
cute story,
behavior.
but to highlight something that popped into my brain right there, I think too, you're talking about teaching the little ones. I'd like to pose a quick question. I mean, what do you teach through your experiences, and how do your perceptions frame around financial aspects of your life so that you're actually teaching yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Right? We are telling ourselves, reinforcing things to ourselves a whole lot. And that perception-based process either solidifies unhealthy aspects of your financial life in an emotional sense, or has potential to really shift them into a more direction that you want to attend.
Yeah.
And hopefully our conversation tonight contributes to shifting some of those things if you've held on to some of these types of things we've talked about tonight.
Yeah, and then I think in that communication piece really is to decide what are some things that you can compromise on. And I think that's a hard concept, but I think it's something that has to happen because we carry into every situation the financial teachings of our family of origin, who we grew up with, who we grew up around. And so I know that even like before I had gotten married and had talked through things, I was like, you have to have your own money. Because as a product of divorce, I'm like, you have to have your go money. Like that's a real thing, your go money. And I'm an abandonment person. Like if that couldn't tell you.
I
right
have
off
to
the
share
bat.
this, I
Yeah.
think. Hopefully she won't be mad at me. Lisa, if you are, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. It was really funny because when we were dating in college and things were getting more serious, graduation's coming around or whatever, and we laugh about it now because she realized something was different up because one night I'm sitting there in her apartment and we're hanging out at her house or wherever she was living on her couch, and I remember the conversation, and she remembers it very well too, and it was just so cute because I was trying to start the communication thing, and I just looked at her, I was like, so I'm just curious, how how many credit cards do you actually right? And the next question was, what kind of balances are on those cards? Because that was the
Just
forming.
completely normal conversation for date night. Yeah.
Right. We were just hanging out. But you just highlighting the communication, right? And the connection that you begin to have on this and the debt thresholds and how you kind of start out. And all of that is really formative. So, yeah, she knew something was really up when I went there.
Yeah, for sure. Also, that like my takeaway from that would have been like, oh, he's going to ask me to marry him.
Oh, that's
like that would have been.
I mean, that's what was coming.
That would have been my immediate takeaway. Oh, he's into me.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah,
he's like, I know something's up here. Yeah,
yeah. So
probably a bad tip.
So if there was any one statement that I would make, kind of like in an ultimate summary, it would be, make money, don't let money make you.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be my takeaway for today. Because,
make money and don't let money make you.
Yeah.
Or make your decisions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because
you are enough, and the wealth comes from you being present.
Well, it's funny. I appreciate that, Kasie, and we start taxiing in here with this idea, I think, because it's interesting. You asked me, what does wealth mean? And I was only able to give you the answer based on what we had talked about with shame and guilt and fear and all those types of things. And there's a lot of negative and whatnot. And I think, what we're hopefully reframing, and for you to think out there in the new year and as you move through this journey through 2022 with us, that you could really reframe some of those thoughts that you've had, that you can really relive and re-experience what it is that you see as wealth and redefine matching them with your values and your purpose and the priorities that you have, so that it isn't about get rich or get more or be bigger. It's really becomes more about more grounding things in your life, such as the relationships and the people, and your teaching today helping us understand the sheer value of time. So I thank you for that. That's some really strong. That's some strong things there to reevaluate and redesign
and
our financial life.
Understand your emotional experience.
There you go. Nice plug. I have to have a chapter in there on finances. So
maybe I'll write it for you one day.
Awesome. We'll do a joint project.
Sounds
I
good.
could totally see that happening. Summary points, conclusions. We ready to get out of here?
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thanks for hanging out with us this week. We are back on track. We will see you in about 7 days.
Yeah. Stay well, stay safe.
Take care.